Hey everyone, welcome to the Good News Podcast. As always, glad that you can join us. This is a cool episode. This is with a long time friend of mine. His name is Regan Fletcher. He lives in San Francisco. We grew up together. We went to school together. We sat beside each other in grade 1. We played sports together our whole life. We were in each other's weddings, like that kind of friend. And man, wow, I get emotional every time I think about it. He had a near-death experience a few years back, and he's going to share in great detail what he experienced and the impact of that. I think you're going to be inspired and encouraged and blown away by this one. Let's dive in. Hey, welcome, friends. So glad to have you with us on the Good News Podcast today. I mean, I know I say every week, this is a special episode, but I'm telling you, man, this one is special. In fact, this is a very good friend of mine, Regan Fletcher. We've grown up together, as you heard in the intro, and man, this is a conversation that I know we had a few years back, and I thought, wow, wouldn't it be amazing to be a fly on the wall of this conversation? Well, guess what, friends? You get to be. I hope you're not insulted by this. You get to be that fly on the wall today. So, Rig, thanks, man. This is a huge conversation for us to have today. Really appreciate you being open to have it, and I think probably a great place to start is to talk a little bit about what your health had been like overall. You know, because I think that's a piece to this story that as we get into it.
Yeah, well, I mean, my health had been good. I was like a lot of us that get towards our late 40s. I had added some extra pounds, but I was still active. And, my wife used to refer to me as fit fat. I smiled the other day. I saw someone with a T-shirt, wearing a T-shirt that said, "Kind of fit, kind of fat." And that was basically me.
Yeah.
A couple of years prior to when this happened, I had been diagnosed by a cardiologist with mitral valve prolapse. Just in a regular checkup, my doctor heard a bit of a murmur, and so millions of people have mitral valve prolapse, and only a small percentage of people that have it ever even learn about it in their lifetime. There are millions of people that live with mitral valve prolapse without even having it diagnosed. So it's and for the people that have it diagnosed, it's typically nothing. They live their entire lives without it causing a problem. It's so little of a thing that cardiologists only have you check back with them like every 2 years, to see if it's gotten worse at all. And the short of it with mitral valve prolapse, what happens is you have valves in your heart, and so your heart's pumping blood, and you want to keep the blood pumping in one direction. Right? It's a one-way street through your arteries. And so your heart will pump and blood will go out. And right after that pump and the blood goes out, those valves will close. And it's just millions of times, billions of times through your life, those valves just open, close, open, close, open, close while you're awake, while you're asleep. And when you have mitral valve prolapse, one of those valves doesn't close all the way. And so it's like not leaving your door open a crack in the wintertime, in that you don't really notice a change in the temperature of your house. But if you're by the door, you'll feel a cold draft blowing in. And so for 99.9% of people who have mitral valve prolapse, a trace of blood regurgitates or turns around and comes back the other way through that small opening. For when I first had it diagnosed, and for the first 3 years after that diagnosis, that's what I had. I had mitral valve prolapse, the same as everyone else who has mitral valve prolapse. It didn't impact my life. I went to my cardiology checkups every couple of years. And in fact, this happened at Christmas. Just 5 months prior, I had my most recent cardiology checkup. And the cardiologist, and I could see on the screen, he said, there's the little trace of blood that's regurgitating, but overall you look good.
Mm. Wow.
So long-winded, but that was my health before that Christmas.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I think like that was why it was so shocking to us that you had this massive heart attack. Because you weren't necessarily running marathons, but you'd been a sportster all your life, playing sports, and you were healthy and running around with your kids and, all those sorts of things. Man, so when, the end of the year around Christmas time, 2018 was when you had this heart attack. I know we were away. It was over just after Christmas. We were away with our family and got email from your sister, Lanya, just saying that you were fighting for your life kind of thing. It was such a shock. And so, hey, Ray, take us back a little bit, if you would, to what happened, what led to that. And then we'll there's a lot of drop downs, to the whole experience, but let's start there just to kind of give people a sense of what happened.
Well, first off, I'll just, not for the sake of nitpicking, but I just need to clarify that it wasn't a heart attack.
Okay.
So they are very two different things medically. And the reason that I'm distinguishing on that is because what I've learned since from talking to friends who have experienced something not similar to my near-death experience, but like heart murmurs or have been diagnosed with mitral valve prolapse. It's very important to distinguish the difference between the two, because heart attack typically comes from heart disease and blocked arteries, and is treated differently than mitral valve prolapse, which is just a valve that stops working, and it can't be treated except when it's either too late or almost too late.
Wow. Yeah.
So anyway, it was coming up on, it was Christmas break had started, winter break had started with the kids, and I hadn't played hockey in years. And I mean, from when we were kids, like I was on the ice 5 times a week. I played all the way through college hockey. I played at a I can't compete with, one of your previous guests. I didn't make it as far as Theo did, but, I played at a high level and hadn't played in a long time. And then my oldest kid, Tyler, at the time was 8 or 9 years old, and they were having like a parent-son hockey game at one of their last regular scheduled practice before Christmas.
Yeah.
Or being off for like a week or so. And so I figured, all right, well, I haven't played hockey in years because of concussions, and most of those concussions were from guys running into me, guys that are like 6'2" and 220 pounds, but this would be playing against a bunch of 8-year-olds.
Yeah.
So I figured I was safe to go out there, and if nothing else, just stand in front of the net and, even just lay on my belly and give them a chance to shoot it over me. So anyway, I went out and it was a blast. But as far as doctors can tell in hindsight, that activity just set off something in my mitral valve. So that was 2 days before Christmas, the evening of the 23rd. 24th, Christmas Eve day, I was having difficulty like walking up the stairs. I remember like Christmas Eve, kids had gone to bed, and my wife and I are doing all the presents and everything. And I was going up to the attic to get presents that were hidden up there. And I couldn't make it up the stairs.
Wow.
And I ended up I told her, like, I just overdid it last night at that hockey game. And I can't do this. I can't help out with the Christmas preparation stuff.
Wow.
And I went to bed, and she did all of it, and got everything ready for Christmas morning. And then Christmas morning came, and I couldn't get out of bed. And finally, I knew that I just had to. So for Christmas morning, and I dragged myself down the stairs. But if you look at photos of Christmas Day from that year, I'm in the background. I'm laying on the sofa. Most of the photos, my eyes are closed. I just did not have the energy to get up.
Mm.
And it's, so now it's starting to feel like something's wrong. And my first thought, and Betty's first thought, was that it was pneumonia. Each of us had pneumonia in the past, and everything that I was experiencing matched the symptoms of pneumonia. But it's Christmas Day, so I can't really call up my doctor. So I go, Betty tells me to go to the ER. But she asked me if I'm good enough to drive myself, so that she can stay home Christmas morning with the kids. And so I drive myself over to the ER. And when I get in there, they check my vitals and my symptoms, and they say, yeah, it's probably it's probably pneumonia, but hang tight. It's really busy, and we can get you some antibiotics to get you started, and it'll help clear up the pneumonia. And so I'm sitting in the waiting room, and it was packed on Christmas morning, and they didn't see me as being a top priority. And so finally I get called back, and they get me into a room, and I'm sitting on a gurney, and I'm texting with Betty, just telling her an update. And then and they had me hooked up to for an EKG.
Yeah.
And the last thing I remember is the nurse was going to give me an IV just to get fluids in me, and said, I'm having difficulty finding a vein. Just sit tight, and I'm going to go find someone that can help me find a vein. And then that was it. That's the last memory I have. And when I woke up, the next memory is my eyes opened, and this little exam room now had like 10 people in it. And the ER doctor looked at me, and the first thing he said was, wow, you gave us quite a scare. We thought we lost you there for a minute.
Wow.
And so everything that, we want to talk about today starts from that moment.
Yeah.
And so anyway, that's what led up to this. Betty told me later that, my text updates just stopped, and she was sending me messages and not getting any responses. And, at this point, I was just in the ER. I hadn't been admitted or anything. So she's calling the hospital, trying to find out what happened to me. And the person she talks to doesn't see me in their records, because I'm not admitted yet. And, just said, sorry, man, we don't have any record of him here. And so that happens to Betty a couple times. And then she calls another time, and, she's told me this afterwards, that the person on the other end of the line said, it was talking in a normal voice, and then Betty heard her just go dead silent. And the next thing she said was, ma'am, you should come in here as soon as you can.
Oh my goodness. And basically you and her had been texting, and all of a sudden it's dropped off. So she has no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
It's Christmas Day still.
Yes.
Merry Christmas.
Yep.
Wow. Oh
Yeah.
my goodness.
Yeah. So, so between the last message that I had sent
Yeah.
and Betty getting that information from someone on the phone, like 3 hours had passed.
Holy.
Um,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow.
So, yeah. So anyway, so that's all, those are the facts, if you will,
Yeah.
of what happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, but everything that changed my life happened in that short amount of time between when I went into cardiac arrest and when I was resuscitated.
Yeah.
Which I've seen a report, the doctor's report, and apparently that was only 60 seconds.
Really?
But the experience that I had felt like 2 hours, 3 hours.
Hmm.
And it all happened in 60 seconds.
Wow. Wow.
And everything that I've read about near-death experiences since then, every person says the same thing. Technically, my heart stopped for 30 seconds, for 90 seconds, for 2 minutes, whatever it was. It's always a short amount of time. And in extreme cases, it might be a little bit longer. But every single person says it felt like a day or
Wow.
even a week in some cases.
Yeah. Yeah. So when the doctor said, "Hey, we're glad, we almost lost that. We're going to lose you there." At that point, were you aware of what had happened as far as what you had experienced? Was it there right away for you?
My first thought was, I just died.
Okay.
My second thought was, I want to go back to where I just was.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Hey, let's talk a bit about what you experienced then, Rig. What was it that you saw, that you remember, that was, that was what you wanted to go back to? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and then my third thought was, I
Okay.
need to hold on to this.
Yeah.
Because and all of that processed in my brain in a split second. And I just, before I could even respond to any to the doctor or the nurses, I knew that I had to hold on to what I just experienced so I didn't forget it.
Mm.
And what I experienced, the short version is, I mean, sometimes it sounds kind of corny, like you see movies, and you see Hollywood sometimes visualize this as someone like running through a field, and it's sunny and there's mountains in the background and they're running through this tall field of tall grass and wildflowers. And the corny or ironic thing is that that's kind of what it was like.
Really?
Yeah. Except that my kids were there.
Hmm.
And other people were there. And so it wasn't like, we talk about in the earthly world, we talk about, going to heaven and seeing the people that you've lost in your life and are now in heaven. Because I saw people that were alive.
Mm.
I it was my kids, and like most of it was just like playing in this field with my kids, and it wasn't playing any type of game. It was like this. I mean, as far as I can tell, it's like a psychedelic experience, and that we're all just in this. Here's what it's like. If you've watched the Winnie the Pooh, there's a Winnie the Pooh movie where Winnie the Pooh kind of goes on a trip, and it's where, like, I can't remember the name of the characters. It's not Snuffleupagus. That's the Hufflepuffs or something. Like, he's in this dream world, and and the movie was made in the '60s, and it incorporates a bunch of the '60s psychedelic imagery. Or if you've been to Disneyland or Disney World and ridden on the Winnie the Pooh ride, and there's one segment where they recreate that. And honestly, that's what it was like, in that, I was with my kids, and we're just kind of like tumbling and rolling, and we're moving in ways that humans don't move on Earth. But it was just joy and laughter and happiness, and I saw other people, both people who have died and people who are still alive. But most of it was just playing with my kids, and in the most joyful way, more joy than I've ever experienced in anything that I've done with them or done with anyone else. And what I've come to think about after is that what I was experiencing was just pure, unadulterated love. That's what it was. It was a physical and emotional and visual, like every sense that you can think of. It was all of those senses experiencing love. And that's why, when I was resuscitated, my first thought was, I want to go back.
Wow.
It was because I don't think you can experience that feeling in the earthly world.
Yeah.
I certainly haven't. Although actually I'm wrong about that. And I can talk about that separately. There is apparently a drug that's been discovered in the Amazon that recreates or that creates an experience very similar to a near-death experience. But anyway, that's the short of it, is that I experienced the purest form of love.
Wow. Oh, I love that. I love that description, Reek. And man, my mind is just filled with questions. I don't want to drop down into this one. So, practically speaking, when you had this moment with the doctor, which was the first person you saw after this near-death experience, you're still probably trying to figure out what just happened. What did you just experience, and what did you feel, and how do you name that? Did you tell them that, or when did you start talking about this? How did and how have you talked about this? Because, like, I so appreciate that you're being open to share this, but I recognize, like, you probably don't lead with this with a stranger on the street. You know what I mean? Like, this is a pretty personal experience. So, like, what happened when you came to, and when did you start being aware enough to even talk about this? Yeah, how did that go?
Well, first off, so before I went into cardiac arrest, and I mentioned that they had hooked me up to do an EKG, and this one nurse who clearly was, not having a great day, and had been dealing with just a ton of patients in the ER. She did the EKG on me, and she said, "No, there's nothing wrong with your heart." And so then I came to, and I see the doctor's right in front of me, and he delivers this message that that they thought they lost me. And at the back of the room, there's 10 people, and at the back of the room, I see that nurse standing in the doorway looking at me. And I didn't say anything, but I still vividly remember just looking at her and thinking, "See, I told you there's something wrong with my heart."
Oh, well, I don't know if this is appropriate or not in the midst of this conversation, but there's apparently, I don't know if it's true or not, but there's apparently an epitaph where it says on a tombstone, "See, I told you I was sick." Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, I'm thinking about that as a sure. Yeah.
And she was just looking at me like, "Oh my God, he might have died because I didn't read the EKG properly." But then my first words were, the doctor said, "We thought we lost you there." My first word to the doctor was, "I died, didn't I?" And, doctors being medical people, they're not going to, he didn't say yes to that. He said, "Well, you went into cardiac arrest." And then I shut up because I was going back to that thought that I need to hold on to this. And so I closed my eyes, and I knew that I was conscious and alive, but in my mind, I wanted to shut out everything that was going on in that exam room and just hold on to everything that I experienced
Hmm.
before it slipped away.
Hmm.
So yeah, that was my immediate response, was just to close my eyes, sort of surrender myself physically to whatever the medical staff had to do, and mentally cement this memory in my brain so that I never forgot it. And and sometimes I think back about that, and I think I marvel at how um, my brain just did that automatically. Um, it realized what a special and unique experience it was, and um, so even though like that experience had ended, um, my body still, my physical body still knew to hold on to it.
Mm. Hmm. Hmm. Incredible. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Um, Ray, let's talk about how it impacted, because I remember, we had a lot of conversations. Like, I mean, obviously, wow,
yeah,
we were just so grateful. We meaning like, hey, our buddies that all grew up together, and we've known each other for years. Yeah, include Katrina in that as well, as in part of the beautiful friendships that we've
yeah,
got, in the history that we have. But we were just again shocked that this has happened, but also just so grateful that you were alive from afar. You're in San Francisco, we're here in Ontario, and just realizing that we could have lost you, and just how, I don't know, it was so eye opening. It was so um yeah, life changing even for us, let alone, I can't imagine for you. And so yeah, what was kind of coming out of that, recognizing the beauty of that moment, and I guess, wouldn't our greatest prayer be that we get those kind of moments, glimpses of life like that here on earth? That's
yeah,
the best that we can have here.
yeah,
But the appreciation for life. I remember you were so appreciative of your life, which makes sense coming out of that. But how did, yeah, what was that kind of impact on you as you moved back into recovery and getting your
yeah.
life together? And yeah. Mhm.
Well, before I even got into my recovery, I wasn't medically out of the woods yet.
Yeah.
Um, so that was on Christmas, and so I was in the ICU, and they were they were trying to get me stable. They knew that they had to operate on my heart to fix the valve, but they're trying to stabilize me before doing that operation. And to this day, I still don't really understand medically what happened. Um, but Betty was at the hospital one night, and the doctors had gone home. It was late at night, and I flatlined again,
Mm.
and all the alarms started going off, and and I had lines going into my body in three different places,
Yeah.
and I've seen photos of me, and I was not conscious really for like the week following all this. I've seen pictures of me, and seen my kids visit me and everything, but I have no memory of any of the medical stuff. Um, and I looked dead, lying on the hospital bed. I looked dead. And so something happened, like I think 6 nights later. So this is how Betty got to spend New Year's. Like after having all this happen on Christmas, then on New Year's, um, the nurse comes running in, and uh, he's working as hard as he can to try to stabilize me. Calls the cardiology surgeon, and she had gone home. She turns around, comes back, They get me somewhat stable, and then the surgeon brought Betty out into the hall and said, we've been trying to get him stable. We're that option doesn't exist anymore. Your husband basically has 12 hours to live right now.
Mm.
And she said, now what I'm going to do is you don't want me operating on your husband when I've just had an 18-hour shift at the hospital. I'm going to go home and I'm going to get 5 hours of sleep. And then I'm going to come back first thing in the morning, and we will fix your husband's heart. And so with this type of thing, for mitral valve surgery nowadays, they can do it. They can go in through your ribs. If you're stable and they have a longer amount of time, they can go in through your ribs. And so you don't have a big scar on your chest. But that option disappeared for me because she was out of time in order to fix my heart. So, they cut my chest open, and I remember the first time that I saw her when I was in recovery, she told me that my heart was stronger now than the day I was born, because now my heart was like your heart in that that mitral valve worked properly. So I had to get through that whole medical thing first. And it wasn't until after that I was basically conscious and could start to process everything that happened. And I remember one of the first things that I said to Betty, because the summer before we had talked about taking the kids to Disneyland, and we didn't, because we just decided it was too expensive. And one of the first things that I said to her is, we got to take that trip to Disneyland. And just do things that were joyful. And so there were a lot of immediate and then longer term impacts. I guess if I were to shorten it to a couple things, it was that I realized that I had died.
Yeah.
I realized that I was getting a second chance. And I understood that I had to make the most of that. I had to make the most of it with my family. I had to make the most of it emotionally. I had to, because I had this experience where, when my heart was stopped, all I experienced was pure love and joy. I had to set myself on a path to to build up more of that. So basically, like putting more deposits in there, so that when I am gone for good, there's even more of that to experience. I mean, that the experience of joy was so great that it left me feeling like I need to build up more in the earthly world, more deposits, so that I have more when I really am dead to experience. So everything that I started to think about and started to plan after that, as I was going through my recovery, was all kind of related to that. How do I put deposits in the bank, in the love bank, the joy bank, that I could cash in later? It's like a retirement plan.
Well, I mean, it makes sense, Rig. Like you said, somewhere along the lines here, like this was a life-changing experience for you, and so it absolutely makes sense. What from in a concrete kind of way, like what would that look like? Like, what were some things that maybe you were doing differently, or even thinking differently, as you kind of lived into this?
Well, I mean, one of my first thoughts was, I just got lucky. I had my life saved and my heart fixed. One of my first things was, you know what? The career that I've been in for 20 years has been financially rewarding, but I've never had any joy out of it. I got to get myself out of that. It just wasn't worth continuing to do to stay in, I had this career in advertising that had been lucrative, but I never had joy from it.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew I had to get out of that. And my first thought was, well, I should go work for the Heart and Lung Association so I can, apply my career skills in a way for good.
Yeah.
That didn't work because in the U.S. Heart Association is based in Dallas, and they only employed people in Dallas. And there's no way in the world I was moving to Texas.
Yeah.
But
cool. I don't want to lose. Like, there were some factors obviously outside of your control, but something was going on within you that's very deep, very, very, very significant. Your life priorities are changing here, as you kind of,
my life priorities changed, and, I still need to earn an income.
Yeah.
But, it had to be in a way that either the job gave me joy or it gave me the time to experience more joy. I had to make more time for my kids. I had to make more time for my family. And so then this, one of the interesting things, and I think you were there when the seed was first planted. My dad came out to the hospital to see me like the day after Christmas. My mom couldn't travel. So, and, I don't know if your listeners or your congregation knows about the group of friends that you grew up with, but, part of wanting to experience more joy, more happiness, and making the effort to do that was I hadn't seen the Rebels in a while, and I wanted to go home and see the Rebels and catch up with you guys. And
so just a little for people to kind of catch this exactly, Regan, is a bunch of us grew up together in Oshawa, and we all sat at the break time between classes. We sat in this little hallway together and hung out, and we're probably the last thing from it, but because I don't know why, but someone made it, we called it Rebel Hall. And so we were the rebels who hung out in Rebel Hall. I don't know that we were very rebellious at all, but anyway, it's all good. But that's like some long-term relationships and friendships. And totally get it, Reek. Yeah.
I think one of the teachers called us conformist corners. But
that's great.
I wanted to see you guys, you and I've been friends with you and Jace since we were 6.
Yeah.
With all the guys since like going back to grade 1. And you guys are brothers that I didn't have. So I wanted to see you guys. And, I had to go see my mom because she couldn't travel to come see me. So anyway, the point that I'm getting to is that I came out to Oshawa for a visit. And I brought 2 of my 3 kids with me. And Robbie says, hey, you should go check out this new Ninja Warrior gym that opened in Oshawa. And so I took Tyler and Brady there. And it was just, it was like this, it was this aha moment, and the light went off. And my kids were just absolutely loving their experience at the Ninja Warrior gym in Oshawa. And I looked at it and I was like, this is it. I'm going to open a Ninja Warrior gym back home where I live. This is it. It's a great business. Like I ended up talking to the owner of that one in Oshawa, and she was just openly sharing a lot of business information with me and her revenue numbers. And I was like, this is a great way to make a living, and it's doing something where I'm active, and it's a place that kids and families can come and just experience happiness together, build memories together. And like, it was just so clear to me what a great way to make a living for this second life that I have. So I set about doing that. And um, the pandemic got in the way a little bit. um, I actually had agreed to a lease. Um, it took a while to find a building. A totally separate story, is not important here. But I had a building lined up here in the town that I live in California. And we were scheduled to sign the lease on March 13th of 2020.
Mm.
March 13th of 2020 is when San Francisco and all the counties around San Francisco went into lockdown.
Yeah. Wow.
And so, so that announcement was in the morning, and I was scheduled to go sign that lease in the afternoon.
Wow.
And I remember calling the owner of the building and said, let's just wait and see how this plays out.
Yeah, let's give it a couple. Let's give it a couple weeks or a couple of years. Yeah.
And he's like, "No, I've seen way worse than this, and it's going to be fine." And I said, "Yeah, you're probably right, but let's just wait and see how it goes."
Good call.
So, and like some people have said to me, "Oh, well, that's probably a sign that you shouldn't do this," and I'm like, "Not at all. This was absolutely a sign that I should do this. That, but that I was stopped from signing the lease before it would have like financially bankrupted me before even been able to open." So, what I experienced there in my 60 seconds of physically being dead, the way that stuck with me is that, I feel a lot more positive towards what's possible.
Yeah, that's
and
awesome.
what it can do.
Yeah.
And so in trying to open this Ninja Warrior gym, there have been a lot of setbacks.
Mm-hmm.
Financially and just logistically, the pandemic and, zoning codes around the San Francisco area are super strict, and it's just made it really difficult to get a building. And I'm right in the middle of Silicon Valley, so rents are really expensive. Anyway, there've just been a lot of setbacks, and it would have been really easy to say, this just, this isn't meant to be. I just got to get a different job. But I've never felt that way, ever.
Oh, yeah.
Betty has. She's been very vocal that, maybe this just wasn't meant to be. And, but maybe it's just been stubbornness, bullheadedness on my part. But I've just known that this is what I should do for my happiness, my family's happiness, and to create an experience that just delivers happiness.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
yeah. No, Regan, just as I hear you talk, like it kind of makes sense that you would, and I think it's really cool that you would think something is possible that you might not have thought possible before. So, as I hear you talking, like partly just your attitude, like just your spirit, but then also the sense, well, if you died and came back to life and you've experienced that, well, then that's pretty much saying what seems like is impossible is actually possible. So, this dream and really living in a way that, hey, we're going to keep working towards this, because even though it doesn't seem possible because of the challenges, it is possible.
Yes.
Because if in my language, if God could do that, bring you back to life, then surely God can help you bring together this plan and purpose for your life. And that's very cool. Yeah.
It's exactly what's happened, James. And, it's what's possible. It's also what's necessary, like to live joyfully,
Mm-hmm.
to live peace within yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so you have to be able to do that, to be able to share it
Mm-hmm.
with the people in your family and the people you encounter day to day. And, for me, if I was coming home miserable from work or not with any joy, then I come home and I don't have any joy or love at the surface, physically at the surface, to share with the people that are around me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it is important for me to stay focused on doing this. But what's been the other really interesting thing, and it's directly tied to what you were just saying, is that, like, one, I've died once.
Yeah.
I died and I came back to life. I'm playing with house money right now, right? Nothing can go wrong for me. Really. Like, I really believe that nothing can go wrong for me right now with the feeling that I have inside. And the other thing is that I don't have any fear of death anymore. I don't know that I had a fear of death before. I know a lot of people do. I never thought about it before. Now that I've seen what it's like, I'm not taking the attitude like, all right, bring it on. Can't wait for it.
Yeah.
I want it to be 30, 40 years down the road.
Yeah.
But I feel really comfortable about when it does happen, even if it's, I don't want to say a number, but if it's less than the 30
yeah. Yeah.
I'm comfortable with it, because when it happens, it'll be even better. I will be in a better spot.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that keeps me going. That there's nothing to be afraid of, and there's lots to look forward to, and that the better I live my life here, the more I'll have to look forward to after death.
Yeah.
It's a really powerful thing, and it drives me every day. And what's so great about this conversation that we're having right now, for me, is that it brings it all back to the front of my mind. And some days when I'm just getting really angry with my kids, or I'm running into setback after setback and trying to get this ninja gym opened, it's easy for those thoughts to fall away from your conscious mind. But I know that in my core, my new core, they're there all the time.
Yeah. 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 Thanks, Rick. And I hope, as people are listening to this, that I'm sure we'll catch this. We don't have to have a near-death experience to live into some of the things that your story is inspiring us with, Rick, to be appreciative of our life, and to the people who we get to share our life with, to recognize that we don't have to have come back from a near-death experience to recognize that God gives us a second chance, and a third and a fourth and a fifth, to believe in what's possible, even when it's hard, all these, let alone just taking time with your kids and those kinds of, everybody gets busy, and this good reminder for all of us through you sharing your story. And, as you talk about eternity, Rick, like one of the things that the gospel is really clear about is the eternity. When Jesus talks about it, isn't just something we experience when we die. It's something that we're supposed to experience here and now as well. The two somehow go together, and somehow in a really powerful way. You've named that several times today, and just really want to thank you for that, and love to say a prayer of thanks for you as we close off today. But I think it's a prayer for all of us of thanks for it. Just, we've been reminded of what a gift our lives are, and how fragile it all is, but also the opportunity that's there for us to live so fully into it. And the reminder that today has been just a beautiful thing. So thanks so much, Rick. Yeah.
Can I add one more thing?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I would really encourage people to go listen to a Beatles song. And so if you've been listening to me talk about this idea of love after death and love in life, you might think, oh, well, that Beatles song is probably All You Need Is Love. It's a great song, but that's not the one. The very last song that the Beatles recorded is called The End. And there's only 6 lines of lyrics to the song. But the last 3 lines are, and in the end, the love you take is equal to the love you make. And since my experience, I don't have to, cue up this song anymore. It plays in my head all the time, because it's so true. the love that you make here on earth is the love that you take with you after you die.
Mm-hmm.
And so going back to what I was saying before, that analogy of, putting deposits in that bank, it's worth it. And what's really interesting about that song, one, the music is great. It's mostly instrumental. It's, if you know even just a little bit of history of the Beatles and them breaking up and the animosity that happened between the different band members, what's really interesting about this song, in addition to those lyrics, is that when you listen to this, the song's 2.5 minutes, but there's only 6 lines of lyrics. So there's a lot of instrumental. And this is the last song that the Beatles recorded. They're breaking up. It's the last song they did. If you listen to the song, you'll hear very different guitar riffs. And the reason for that is that George, John, and Paul each did their own guitar riff, which is not something that they ever did in Beatles songs. So they each did their own. And then the drums are more prevalent in this song than any other Beatles song, because Ringo did his own thing too. So they were breaking apart, going their separate ways, but the love that they had between the 4 of them and everything that they had created together and shared with the world, for this last song that they recorded, they pulled it all together and they each did their own thing. And they as a group, they allowed each one to do their own thing and express themselves in their own way. And that was the last song they recorded for the world. And they shared what they had learned. It's not a religious song at all. It's not a song. It's not something that you would cue up as a sermon, but it easily could be.
Yeah.
If you listen, I really encourage people to listen to it, because if you know anything about the Beatles, you'll hear that coming out in their music, them sharing this with each other. And then you hear those last 3 lines. In the end, the love you take is equal to the love you make. And if that's in your mind every day, there's really no way that you can go wrong.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Oh, amen. Thanks, Rick. And we got some homework, friends. We got some homework. I can't wait to go listen to that song. Thanks, Rick. Love it. Love it the way you've expressed it, man. Yeah. Hey, let me pray for you and for everyone to close here. Yeah. Loving and gracious God, it's been holy ground on this conversation. So thank you for every little piece of it. You've been speaking to us through it, and certainly grateful for all of that. Thank you for the many messages of good news in this story that Rick has shared, the appreciation for his life. We thank you that he is able to share this podcast with us today, that you've continued to change him through this experience, that he would just a deeper love for you, for life, for his family, for what you've called him to do. We pray for doors to open for this very special project that you've put on his heart, and trust that will come over time, and just give him a continued resiliency and open to your leading. Thank you again, oh God, for the reminder that we the love that we make here is the love that we take, that we somehow are blessed to be a blessing. And when we live into that, everybody wins without question. So just for all of this and more, we give you thanks and praise. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen.
Thank you, Jamie.
Hey, thank you, Rig. Really appreciate you being with us today and sharing some time on the Good News podcast. And I know I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, awesome. I really enjoyed this. This was great. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thanks, Rig. Yeah.
All right, Jamie.
Oh my goodness. That's, like I said in that prayer, that holy ground, sacred space. I don't know about you, but Regan and I, we were so energized by that conversation. We ended up talking for quite a long time after we were done recording, to be honest. And really, I think one of the themes for us was just how that veil between life and death is so very thin. And why not? With God, there is this possibility, this bigness sometimes that we we forget, and all of this conversation, what Regan experienced when he actually died and then came back to life. Oh my goodness, just so powerful. And as we said, this isn't just a message for someone that's had a near-death experience. Isn't this so good for all of us to appreciate life, to recognize how fragile it all is, to want to make a difference and do our very best to live well? Hey, and leave you with this one. Go check out that Beatles song. Let's do Rig's homework. The End. Check it out. It's a good one. Thanks for joining us. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram. Good News with Jamie Holtum. God bless you, friends. Hope to see you next time.